In some parts of Southeast Asia, lifelike spirit dolls known as Lukthep or Kumanthong are cared for like real children, a trend that once drew attention from Thai authorities. I didn't think much of it at first. My wife said she'd found the doll through an online grief group. Other women there talked about rituals, routines, something to focus on when the house felt too quiet. After the miscarriage, quiet had become unbearable for her. I was just relieved she'd found something that helped her sleep again. The doll was small. Not realistic. Nothing like those life-sized ones you see in news clips. She kept it on a shelf in the living room facing the window. She said it was important that it didn't feel boxed in. At first, it was just habits. Lighting a candle in the morning, setting aside a cup of tea in the evening. She'd laugh a little when she did it, like she was embarrassed by herself. I told her it was fine. Everyone copes differently. She started calling them preferences. Not rules, just things the doll liked. It preferred the lights dim at night. It didn't like sudden noise. It needed to be acknowledged before we left the house. None of it felt threatening. If anything, it gave her structure. She seemed calmer when everything was done in the right order. When she forgot something, though, I noticed the change immediately. She'd become restless, short of breath. Her hands would shake as she retraced her steps, whispering to herself. If I asked what was wrong, she'd say she felt off, like she'd missed something important. Once she corrected it, whatever it was, she relaxed, like tension draining out of her body. The routines grew slowly, almost invisibly. Certain objects had to stay where they were. Words had to be phrased carefully. She stopped saying, "I think," and started saying, "I know," even when she clearly didn't. When she caught herself using the wrong phrasing, she'd pause, close her eyes, and start the sentence again. I asked her where all this was coming from. She said she didn't know, just that doing it wrong made her feel pressured. I suggested therapy. She agreed immediately, which surprised me. Then she added that the doll needed to stay in the room during the session. Not because it was alive, she clarified, just because removing it would be disrespectful. We never went. She started writing things down. A notebook she kept in the kitchen drawer. At first it was grocery lists and reminders. Then I noticed the handwriting was different, tighter, more deliberate. Rules, some were crossed out, some rewritten multiple times. A few had dates next to them, like revisions. I asked her about it, and she looked genuinely confused, like she hadn't realized I'd seen it. She said the doll didn't like it when she forgot. I began waking up at night to the sound of movement, not footsteps, just soft, careful noise. Drawers opening, objects being placed down gently, as if precision mattered more than speed. She told me she'd been waking up early, said she felt better that way. The doll never moved on its own. I checked, I watched. Every time its position changed, it was because she had moved it. She was always calm when she did it. Focused, like she was following instructions she couldn't afford to get wrong. That's when it started to bother me. Not the doll, her certainty. I'd ask why something needed to be done a certain way, and she'd say it just did. When I pressed, she'd get anxious, like my questions were interfering with something delicate. One night, after I accidentally moved a chair, she froze. She stared at it for a long time. Then she asked me very carefully not to do that again without telling her. When I laughed it off, she didn't react. She just nodded and went to the notebook. I stopped touching things. I stopped asking questions. Eventually, I noticed something worse. The routines continued even when the doll wasn't in the room, even when it was covered, even when we stayed somewhere else overnight. She'd still follow the same order, correct the same words, apologize under her breath when she thought she'd slipped. The doll wasn't enforcing anything, she was. One evening after she'd gone to bed early, I stood in front of the shelf and picked it up, just to see how it felt. It was lighter than I expected. She appeared behind me almost instantly. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. She just explained, calmly, that I shouldn't do that, not because it would get angry, but because it would confuse things. I put it back. Later that night, I watched her go through the routines again, even though everything was already perfect. She checked each step twice, then once more just to be sure. When she finished, she looked exhausted, relieved. I realized then that even if the doll disappeared, nothing would change. The rules were already inside her. The pressure wasn't coming from the shelf. It was coming from the need to obey something she couldn't see anymore. I learned the routines after that, not because I believed in them, but because correcting her when she made a mistake felt cruel. It was easier to help her get it right. We don't talk about the doll much now, but every morning before we leave the house, she still pauses, just for a second, waiting. And I wait too, because I don't know what happens if we don't.